The Canadian dollar typically performs well in the month of April. So far in 2018, we saw the Canadian dollar have a pickup in mid-March into April. And recently, we started to see the Canadian dollar look like it might be slowing down or turning down, I should say, relative to the US dollar. So where do we stand right now? Well, let's take a look over the last few years at the price action of the Canadian dollar relative to the US dollar. And I'm also going to show you the graph of the price of oil, West Texas Intermediate crude. Now, the price of oil is just one of the many drivers that affect the exchange rate for the Canadian dollar. But in broad terms, when we see a big rally take place for the price of oil, we tend to see the Canadian dollar respond positively and vice versa. If we take a look back here for 2015, we saw the price of oil go down. The Canadian dollar relative to the US dollar went down. Then we saw a rally in 2016 for oil, and the Canadian dollar went up at the same time. Then we saw in 2016 to mid-2017, we saw a flat period for the oil, and the Canadian dollar went down relative to the US dollar. Now, interestingly enough, a little bit later on in 2017, we saw this rally take place for the price of oil. Initially here, we did see a little bit of an uptick in the price of the Canadian dollar. But as the rally continued, the overall trend for the Canadian dollar has been down relative to the US dollar, which is interesting because what was taking place was the concern had been flipped over to the interest differential and the rising rates in the States. Everybody was focusing on the 10-year bond, the yield on the 10-year bond, and that was helping to drive the US dollar up relative to the Canadian dollar, even though the price of oil was going up. So right now, we're in this channel that's trading downwards, so the Canadian dollar overall has been going down. We've had two peaks here. We've just turned down a little bit here. Now, this is interesting and also concerning because, at least for the Canadian dollar, is that the month of May tends to be strong for the US dollar relative to world currencies, including the Canadian dollar. So, despite the Canadian dollar actually having a little bit of a rally here, we might see the Canadian dollar soften up in the month of May relative to the US dollar. Thank you very much. Something to think about.